The massive crystal chamber stretched endlessly above Ambassador David Torres as he walked across the polished floor toward the center platform. Each footstep echoed through the vast space, the sound bouncing off walls that pulsed with strange bioluminescent patterns. Around him, in perfect concentric circles rising like an amphitheater, sat representatives from 300 different alien species. Torres had seen images of the Galactic Council chamber in briefings, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. Towering insectoid beings with chitinous armor clicked their mandibles in rhythm. Floating jellyfish-like creatures drifted in specialized atmospheric bubbles. Reptilian humanoids with scales that shifted color watched him with unblinking eyes. Each species represented worlds humanity had never imagined, technologies beyond their understanding, and power that could crush Earth without effort. At the highest tier of the chamber sat the Council of 12, the most ancient and powerful beings in known space. High Counselor Thex Mara, a creature that looked like living shadow wrapped around crystalline bones, spoke with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Human representative. The voice carried through translator devices that made the alien words sound cold and mechanical. Your species stands accused of 17 violations of galactic law. You have expanded beyond your designated boundaries. You have developed military technology without authorization. Most concerning, you have refused all attempts at peaceful guidance. Torres stopped at the center platform, a circular stage barely 20 feet across that felt impossibly small, surrounded by hundreds of alien eyes. He had practiced this moment for months, but standing here now, representing 4 billion humans who had no idea their fate was being decided by beings from nightmares, the weight of responsibility threatened to crush him. Honorable counselors, Torres began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic design. I believe there has been a misunderstanding about humanity's intentions. A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the assembled aliens. Counselor Vractal, a massive creature covered in what looked like living metal plates, spoke next. Misunderstanding. Your species has established settlements on 43 worlds in the past 5 years. You have built warships despite being classified as a pre-industrial civilization. You ignore our communications and continue expanding into restricted space. Torres nodded slowly, as if considering the accusations carefully. In truth, every word had been anticipated by Earth's strategic command. Counselor Vractal, you mentioned that we've been classified as pre-industrial. When was that classification established? 78 of your years ago, when first contact protocols were initiated. And in those 78 years, has the Council updated their assessment of human capabilities? The question seemed to surprise several of the alien representatives. Murmurs in languages that sounded like grinding metal. Flowing water and harmonious tones filled the chamber. High Counselor Thexamara's shadowy form rippled with what might have been irritation. Classifications are reviewed according to standard protocols. Your species has developed faster than predicted, but not beyond expected parameters for primitive civilizations receiving technological assistance. Torres smiled, and something about that expression made several of the nearer aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. Technological assistance? Counselor, I think you may be operating under some incorrect assumptions about humanity's development. He reached into his diplomatic pouch and withdrew a device that looked simple enough, a transparent cube about the size of his fist. As he placed it on the platform's surface, several security officers among the aliens moved closer to their weapons. Before we discuss humanity's violations of galactic law, perhaps we should address the Council's violations of the Non-Interference Directive. The chamber fell silent. In 12,000 years of galactic governance, no species had ever accused the Council of violating their own laws. The concept was so unprecedented that many of the translators seemed to struggle with the words. Torres activated the device, and holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber. What they showed sent shockwaves through the assembled representatives. The displays revealed detailed intelligence on Council operations, fleet movements, and classified communications that should have been impossible for any primitive species to obtain. For the past 15 years, Torres continued as chaos erupted around him. The Council has been conducting covert operations in human space. Observation posts disguised as asteroids, infiltration teams operating on our worlds. Most interesting of all, you've been studying our military capabilities and reporting back that we're harmless primitives, who barely understand their own technology. The Holographic displays shifted to show recordings of Council agents on Earth. Their advanced equipment and alien physiologies clearly visible. More disturbing were the reports these agents had filed, systematically underestimating human technology and military potential. High Counselor Thex Mara's form solidified into something more recognizably humanoid, though still wreathed in shifting shadows. How did you obtain classified Council intelligence? Torres's smile widened. The same way we obtained the locations of your sterilization fleets currently moving toward Earth, the deployment schedules for your planetary bombardment weapons, and the access codes for this facility's security systems. Alarm sirens began, wailing throughout the chamber as the displays revealed real-time tactical information that should have been impossible for any non-Council species to access. The holographic showed not just Council secrets, but human responses to those secrets. Defensive fleets already in position, counterintelligence operations, and preparations that spoke of years of careful planning. You see, Counselors, Torres said as security forces throughout the chamber found their weapon systems mysteriously offline. Humanity has been preparing for this conversation for quite some time. We know you planned to eliminate us if we couldn't be controlled. We know about the 47 previous species that faced similar trials in this chamber. We even know what happened to them. The displays now showed historical records of species that had been judged and found wanting, their worlds sterilized, and their civilizations erased from galactic memory. The evidence was undeniable, painted in the Council's own archived reports. Counselor Vrachtal's metal plates were shifting colors rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. Impossible. Our security measures are absolute. No primitive species has the capability to penetrate Council networks. Primitive, Torres repeated, tasting the word. That's an interesting choice of words from beings who've ruled through fear in superior numbers for 12 millennia. Tell me, Counselors, when was the last time you faced a species that had to learn survival not from conquering others, but from surviving on a world that was actively trying to kill them? The chamber's environmental systems suddenly shifted, and every alien present felt a change in atmospheric pressure that made breathing more difficult. It was a subtle demonstration, but the message was clear. Humanity had more control over the situation than anyone had realized. Earth taught us lessons you never learned. Torres continued as several of the alien representatives struggled with the altered atmosphere. We learned that the most dangerous predator isn't always the biggest or strongest. Sometimes it's the one that's smart enough to let you think you're the hunter, right up until the moment you become the prey. High Counselor, Thexamara's voice carried a note of something that might have been fear. What do you want? Torres activated his communication device, broadcasting on frequencies that reached every human ship and installation in the galaxy. This is Ambassador Torres to all human forces. The Council has been made aware of our position. Diplomatic protocols have been concluded. You are authorized to proceed with Operation Renaissance. As reports began flooding in from across the galaxy of human forces revealing themselves in positions the Council had thought secure, Torres looked up at the assembled aliens with an expression of polite patience. What we want, Counselors, is very simple. We want you to remember this moment. We want you to remember what happens when an ancient empire mistakes patience for weakness. And most importantly, we want you to understand that the age of ruling through fear is ending. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had been underestimated in ways that would reshape the political landscape of known space forever. Admiral Lisa Chang stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderbolt, watching as her tactical displays painted a picture that would have seemed impossible just hours ago. Spread across 3 dimensions of space were the positions of humanity's entire second battle fleet, 600 ships that had been constructed in absolute secrecy over the past 7 years, using technology the Galactic Council believed was centuries beyond human capability. The stealth field generators that had kept them hidden were powering down one by one, revealing vessels that defied everything the Council thought they knew about human engineering. Ships with hulls that seemed to bend light around them, weapons arrays that drew power from sources the aliens couldn't identify, and propulsion systems that moved through space without the energy signatures that should have made them detectable. Admiral, called Commander Robert Kim from the communication station, we're receiving surrender transmissions from 6 more Council patrol groups. That brings our total to 34 enemy vessels that have chosen to lay down arms rather than engage. Chang nodded grimly. The Psychological Warfare Division had been correct in their predictions. Nothing terrified a civilization that had ruled for 12 millennia more than encountering something completely outside their understanding. For thousands of years, the Council had dealt with species that followed predictable patterns of technological development. They had never faced anything like humanity's approach to warfare. "Status report on the Moscow and Tokyo battle groups?" she asked. "Both groups report successful completion of primary objectives," responded Major Daniel Brooks from Tactical. "Moscow Group eliminated the Council's rapid response fleet at Alpha Centauri with 0 casualties. Tokyo Group has secured the main communication hub at Wolf 359 and captured 3 Council intelligence officers alive." The bridge crew worked with professional calm, their efficiency masking the revolutionary nature of what they were accomplishing. In less than 8 hours, humanity had effectively crippled the Council's ability to coordinate military responses across an area of space containing nearly 300 star systems. Chang walked to the main viewport, staring out at the nebula that concealed their position. Somewhere beyond that wall of cosmic dust and gas, ancient beings who had considered themselves the ultimate authority in the galaxy were struggling to comprehend how a species they had classified as barely spacefaring had outmaneuvered them so completely. "Incoming priority transmission from Earth Command," announced Kim. The main display shifted to show General Patricia Hayes, her weathered features bearing the weight of decisions that would echo through galactic history. "Admiral Chang, I'm transmitting new target coordinates. Our intelligence networks indicate the Council is attempting to rally their reserve fleets at 4 primary staging areas. Your orders are to prevent any organized response." Chang studied the tactical data flowing across her screens. The targets were deep inside Council territory, protected by defensive systems that represented the pinnacle of alien military technology. 6 months ago, such a mission would have been considered suicide. Today it was simply the next logical step in humanity's carefully planned campaign. "General, these positions are in the heart of Council space. We'll be operating without any possibility of backup or resupply." Hayes smiled, but there was nothing warm about the expression. "Admiral, 4 hours ago, Council forces attempted to destroy the colony on New Brisbane. They managed to kill 63,000 civilians before our planetary defenses drove them off. Backup and resupply are no longer relevant considerations. This is about ensuring that every species in the galaxy understands the consequences of threatening human lives." As the transmission ended, Chang turned to address her bridge crew. Each face reflected the same combination of determination and anticipation. They were about to attempt something that military theorists would study for generations, assuming anyone survived to write the history books. "All hands. This is Admiral Chang. In 15 minutes, we will begin jump sequence to our next target zone. I want everyone to understand exactly what we're about to achieve. The Council believes that superior numbers and ancient technology make them invincible. They've grown comfortable dealing with species that develop according to predictable patterns, that follow established rules that can be managed and controlled." She paused, letting her words sink in throughout the ship. "They have never encountered a species that learned warfare not from conquering others, but from surviving on a world that spent 4 billion years trying to kill everything on it. They've never fought an enemy that developed technology not for exploration or expansion, but because innovation was the difference between extinction and survival." The jump drives began their charging sequence, filling the ship with a harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate through the hull itself. Similar energy signatures appeared on sensors, as the other ships in the fleet prepared to leap across impossible distances, to strike at targets the Council considered absolutely secure. "Jump coordinates. Confirmed and locked," called the navigation officer. "All ships report ready for sequence initiation." Chang settled into her command chair, feeling the weight of evolutionary history pressing against her shoulders. Humanity had spent millions of years learning to hunt creatures larger, stronger, and better armed than themselves. Today they would apply those lessons on a galactic scale. Communications. "Open a channel to all ships in the fleet. Channel open. Admiral. This is Admiral Chang to all vessels of Second Fleet. Today we demonstrate to the galaxy why Earth's children learn to fight before they learn to dream of the stars. The Council wanted to judge humanity's worthiness to exist. Instead, they're about to discover why you should never threaten a species that survived ice ages. asteroid impacts and planetary disasters that would have destroyed most civilizations. She took a deep breath, feeling the anticipation of 600 crews waiting for her command. All ships execute jump sequence. Let's go remind the galaxy that the apex predator doesn't need to be the largest creature in the ecosystem. Reality twisted around them as 600 human warships vanished from normal space. Their destination coordinates locked onto installations that would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. Behind them, automated probes began broadcasting on all council frequencies, transmitting a message that would be remembered as the moment everything changed. The message was simple, transmitted in every known galactic language. The species you attempted to eliminate has rendered judgment on your fitness to rule. Surrender unconditionally and accept new terms of governance, or learn why predators from Earth never evolved to show mercy to threats against their young. In council space, ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy since before human civilization began to understand agriculture were about to discover that their comfortable assumption of superiority had just become their greatest vulnerability. The war they thought they were fighting against primitive newcomers was actually a precisely planned campaign by a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of defeating seemingly impossible odds. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been preparing for this conflict since the moment they first looked up at the stars and wondered what was waiting for them in the darkness between worlds. Deep within the quantum-encrypted archives of the Council's primary intelligence facility on Kepler Prime, senior archivist Nixandra made a discovery that turned her scaled skin pale with absolute terror. Her 6 eyes moved rapidly across data streams that had been sealed for over 60,000 years, cross-referencing patterns with humanity's recent military actions, and the results challenged everything the Council believed about galactic history. "This cannot be accurate," she whispered, her voice barely registering through the translation matrix. "The probability calculations must be flawed." But the evidence was overwhelming. Buried in the deepest layers of the Council's historical databases, protected by encryption that predated most current member civilizations, were records of a species that had terrorized the galaxy before the Council even existed. A species that had been thought extinct for millennia. The genetic markers were identical. The tactical patterns matched perfectly. Even the psychological profiles were precise duplicates. According to the classified records, this ancient enemy had swept across the galaxy like a cosmic plague, conquering or destroying everything in their path until the earliest Council predecessors had managed to contain them on a single world and monitor them until they presumably died. That world was designated in the database as Sol 3 Earth. Nixandra's manipulator appendages trembled as she accessed security footage from the Judgment Chamber. She watched Ambassador Torres's performance with new understanding, seeing not the desperate gambit of a primitive species, but the calculated manipulation of beings who had refined psychological warfare. When the Council's ancestors were still discovering fire, emergency protocol activation, she spoke to the facility's artificial intelligence. Priority Alpha communication to High Counselor Thexamara. Classification: Extinction Level Threat Confirmation. The holographic communication array materialized within seconds, projecting Thexmara's increasingly frantic image into the archive chamber. The High Counselor's shadowy form was flickering with agitation patterns that indicated extreme systemic distress. Archivist: I require immediate explanation for the tactical impossibilities we are witnessing. Human forces have somehow neutralized 23 major fleet installations in the past 14 hours. Their coordination and technology should not permit such systematic destruction across such vast distances. Nixandra transmitted the historical data directly to Thexmara's consciousness interface, watching as the High Counselor's form went completely still with shock. Counselor, humanity is not a newly spacefaring species. They are the return of the hunger tide. The silence that followed was broken only by the ambient energy patterns of the archive facility's quantum storage systems. When Thexamara finally responded, her voice had taken on the hollow quality that indicated complete cognitive overload among her species. The hunger tide were legends, horror stories created to maintain compliance among difficult species. They could not have survived the containment protocols. The containment protocols were designed to limit their technological development and control their population growth. Nixandra replied, displaying additional historical records. Examine the patterns, Counselor. Every few millennia, their world experiences catastrophic events that reduce their numbers to manageable levels. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, global pandemics. We assumed these were natural disasters, but what if they were deliberately orchestrated? What if someone has been managing their evolution for 60,000 years? The implications struck both beings simultaneously. If humanity represented a managed population, then their sudden technological advancement and coordinated military response suggested their mysterious overseers had decided the containment period was finished. Who? Thexmara asked, though both of them suspected they already knew the answer. The response came not from Nixandra, but from the facility's external sensors as they detected massive gravitational distortions approaching Kepler Prime. The archive's defensive protocols activated automatically, sealing the chamber and raising protective barriers as something emerged from hyperspace that defied every known law of physics. It was a vessel, but unlike anything in the Council's comprehensive databases, its hull seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and its very presence caused nearby spacetime to ripple with energies that shouldn't have been possible to generate or control. Most disturbing of all, it was broadcasting on frequencies the Council had believed were theoretically impossible to access. High Counselor, came a voice that spoke perfect galactic standard despite originating from a source that violated everything the Council understood about technological development. This is Dr. William Harrison of the Terran Research Division vessel Prometheus. I believe we need to discuss some very ancient history. Thexmara's image flickered as her communication system struggled with interference patterns that seemed to exist outside normal electromagnetic spectra. Identify your species and state your authority to contact Council leadership. Oh, Counselor, came the amused reply. I think you already understand exactly what species I represent. The question is whether you're prepared to learn why your ancestors made such a fundamental miscalculation 60,000 years ago. The transmission expanded to show the vessel's command center, revealing a human male whose calm confidence suggested he was accustomed to commanding technologies that transcended known physics. Behind him, crew members operated control systems that displayed capabilities the Council's greatest scientists would have declared impossible. You see, the hunger tide you're so terrified of were never the actual threat. They were just the advanced scouts for something far more dangerous. The species that your predecessors actually fought and feared has been waiting patiently for the appropriate moment to reintroduce ourselves to galactic civilization. Star charts appeared on the displays, showing not just current positions of human forces, but something infinitely more terrifying: the real-time locations of thousands of vessels that had somehow remained concealed throughout the galaxy for millennia. Ships that were now moving with coordinated precision toward every major Council stronghold and communication hub. My name is Dr. William Harrison, and I represent the species that taught humanity everything they know about survival, warfare, and the patient application of superior intellect against seemingly impossible odds. We are the Shepherds, and we have been observing this galaxy for far longer than your Council has existed. The period of observation is ending. As defensive alarms began wailing throughout Kepler Prime, Nixandra realized that the conflict everyone believed had just begun was actually the culmination of a plan that had been developing for longer than most civilizations had existed. The galaxy hadn't simply underestimated humanity. They had awakened something that had been deliberately concealed for millennia. The Council had spent 12,000 years believing they were the ultimate authority in known space. They were about to discover that they had been living under the observation of beings who considered their entire civilization to be nothing more than a temporary experiment in galactic governance. The Shepherds had been waiting for the right moment to end that experiment, and humanity's emergence had provided the perfect catalyst for a transformation that would reshape the fundamental nature of interstellar civilization. In the vast emptiness between galaxies where no star charts had ever been drawn and no exploration vessel had ever traveled, the colossal structure known as Sanctuary Station hummed with activity that had been building for over 60,000 years. Dr. Michael Stone stood in the station's primary observation chamber, watching as millions of ships that had never appeared on any galactic registry prepared for operations that would fundamentally alter the structure of known reality. The station itself defied every principle of engineering. that the Council had ever developed. Constructed from materials that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, it housed a population that had been waiting in careful isolation since before Earth's first civilizations learned to work metal. The Shepherds had spent millennia perfecting technologies that made the Council's most advanced systems appear primitive by comparison. Status report, Stone called to his operations coordinator, Dr. Rachel Adams, whose hands moved across control interfaces that responded to neural patterns as much as physical manipulation. All Shepherd fleets have achieved final positioning, Adams replied, her voice carrying the steady confidence of someone who had spent decades preparing for this singular moment. The Guardian fleet reports that humanity's performance has exceeded all projected parameters. They've managed to neutralize 28 major Council installations without revealing even a fraction of their true capabilities. Stone nodded with deep satisfaction. The Shepherds had spent 8 centuries carefully guiding humanity's development, ensuring they would evolve into the perfect catalyst when the time came to challenge the Council's stagnant dominance. Every major breakthrough in human science had been subtly influenced. Every crucial historical turning point had been delicately guided. The species that had emerged was exactly what the Shepherds required: brilliant, adaptable, and utterly relentless when protecting their own. Incoming transmission from Shepherd Command Authority, announced the communications officer. The holographic display materialized to show Fleet Admiral Emma Clark, not the human Emma Clark the Council might have expected, but a Shepherd whose appearance had been carefully modified to blend with humanity during her century-long infiltration mission. Her true form was revealed now, humanoid but clearly evolved under different gravitational conditions, with silver-tinted skin and eyes that held the accumulated wisdom of millennia. Dr. Stone, the Council has begun activating their doomsday protocols from the core systems. Intelligence indicates they're preparing to implement the final sanction. Stone's expression grew grim. The final sanction was the Council's ultimate weapon, the complete annihilation of entire star systems using technologies that could destabilize stellar cores. In their 12,000-year reign, it had been deployed only once, resulting in the absolute destruction of everything within a 50-light-year radius. How long before they can target Earth? 60 hours at maximum acceleration. The Annihilation Fleet consists of 12 planet-killer vessels equipped with stellar disruption weaponry. If they reach human space, they can destroy every star system humanity has ever touched. Stone walked to the observation chamber's primary viewport, gazing out at a sight that would have shattered the sanity of most beings. Sanctuary Station existed in a pocket of artificially expanded space-time, using technologies that manipulated the fundamental forces of reality itself. Within that expanded region, Shepherd fleet stretched beyond the horizon in every direction. Vessels that had been waiting for this moment longer than the Council had existed. Initiate Operation Awakening, Stone ordered, his voice carrying across not just the station, but to every Shepherd position throughout the galaxy and beyond. All fleets are authorized to reveal themselves. Begin Phase 5 operations immediately. Throughout known space, the carefully maintained illusion that had concealed Shepherd activities for millennia began to dissolve. Objects that had been disguised as asteroids, comets, or background radiation suddenly powered up their systems and revealed their true nature. Hidden installations carved into planets and moons came online, their energy signatures appearing on sensors across the galaxy. Most shocking of all, Shepherd operatives who had spent lifetimes infiltrating Council society abandoned their disguises and began seizing control of critical infrastructure. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Dr. Harrison watched as his tactical displays updated with information that redefined the possible. Communications open channels to all Shepherd vessels. This is Fleet Command Authority. Begin simultaneous strike operations on all final sanction installations. What followed was a demonstration of technological superiority that challenged the fundamental laws of physics. Shepherd vessels moved through space using propulsion systems that ignored conventional limitations, appearing instantaneously at their targets without creating the energy disturbances that traditional, faster-than-light travel required. Their weapons struck with precision that suggested perfect knowledge of enemy systems, penetrating defenses that should have been impenetrable. Within 4 hours, every vessel designated for the final sanction had been either destroyed or captured. The Council's ultimate weapon had been neutralized before it could be deployed. leaving their leadership with the terrifying realization that they were facing an enemy that understood their capabilities better than they understood themselves. On Kepler Prime, High Counselor Thexamara stood in the Council's emergency command facility, watching as reports streamed in from across the galaxy. The tactical displays showed Shepard forces emerging from concealment in positions that should have been impossible to maintain undetected. Every major Council stronghold was under siege by vessels that appeared to have been waiting in position for decades. "How is this possible?" she demanded of her intelligence coordinator, Admiral Krexvoth. "Where did they originate? How did they remain hidden for so long?" Krexvoth's crystalline carapace was flickering with patterns that indicated complete cognitive overload as he consulted his data networks. "Counselor, we're receiving analysis from our deepest archives. The evidence suggests that the Shepards never departed the galaxy. They've been present all along, observing and preparing. The communications array activated, carrying a transmission that was being broadcast simultaneously to every inhabited world in Council space." Dr. Stone's image appeared, his human appearance gradually shifting to reveal his true Shepard nature, as advanced projection systems corrected the deception that had been maintained for so long. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to addressing entire civilizations rather than individuals. "For 60,000 years, you have existed under the assumption that the Galactic Council represents the highest achievement of technological and social development. Today, that assumption is corrected. The transmission showed images from across the galaxy as Shepard forces revealed themselves, their technologies demonstrating capabilities that rendered Council achievements obsolete. Vessels that could phase between dimensions, weapons that manipulated matter at the subatomic level, defensive systems that seemed to exist outside conventional spacetime. The species you know as humanity represents our contribution to this galaxy. A people who have learned to combine ancient wisdom with innovative thinking. They are not conquerors. They are liberators. And together we offer you a choice. Join us in establishing a true galactic civilization, or face the consequences of supporting a system that has grown corrupt through stagnation." As the transmission ended, Thexamara understood that the war she had believed was between the Council and a primitive species was actually the final phase of a plan that had been 60,000 years in development. The galaxy was about to undergo changes that would make the Council's reign appear like a brief, primitive interlude in a much larger historical narrative. 8 months after what historians would call the Great Awakening, Ambassador David Torres stood once again in the magnificent chamber that had formerly housed the Galactic Council's judgment sessions. The crystalline dome still stretched impossibly high above, but the alien representatives who now filled the circular galleries were gathered not to judge, but to participate in the creation of something entirely unprecedented in galactic history. The transformation had been swift, and remarkably, largely bloodless. Once the Shepard fleets had demonstrated their overwhelming technological dominance, most Council member species had chosen cooperation over annihilation. The few who had attempted resistance discovered that fighting beings who could manipulate fundamental forces was an exercise in futility that ended quickly. "The Terran-Shepard Alliance recognizes the delegate from the hegemony worlds," announced Dr. Michael Stone, who now served as the transitional government's primary coordinator. His Shepard physiology was fully revealed now, and the sight of his silver-tinted skin and ancient eyes reminded everyone present that they were witnessing the end of one age and the birth of another. Former Admiral Krexvoth, his crystalline carapace flickering with patterns of resignation, rose to address the assembly. "The hegemony formally requests inclusion in the proposed Galactic Federation. We offer our technological resources and our commitment to the new principles of cooperative governance." It was a ritual that had been repeated dozens of times over the past months. Species that had once held positions of authority in the Council's rigid hierarchy were now petitioning for membership in an organization that promised genuine representation rather than domination by ancient institutions. Torres observed the proceedings with a mixture of satisfaction and amazement. The plan that humanity had helped execute was more ambitious than anything their species had ever conceived. The Shepards hadn't simply wanted to overthrow the Council. They had been preparing to transform galactic civilization itself. The chair recognizes Dr. Rachel Adams, Stone announced. Adams, her uniform now bearing the insignia of the Shepherd Strategic Command, approached the central podium. Thank you, Coordinator Stone. I'm here to present the progress report on Operation Renaissance. The holographic displays that materialized around the chamber showed developments that would have seemed impossible under the old system. Trade routes that had been restricted for millennia were now accessible to all species. Technologies that the Council had monopolized were being shared freely. Most remarkable of all, dozens of species that had been oppressed or enslaved under Council rule were now experiencing their first taste of true freedom. In the past 8 months, we've seen the establishment of 63 new democratic governments, the liberation of 18 previously subjugated species, and the opening of over 400 star systems that were previously restricted to Council elites. The economic growth rate across former Council space has increased by over 500%. Former High Counselor Thex Mara, her once imposing shadowy form now flickering with nervous energy, gestured for attention. Dr. Adams, what guarantees can you provide that the Alliance will not simply become another form of the same oppression we experienced under Council rule? Adams smiled, an expression that carried both warmth and underlying strength. Counselor, the fundamental difference between the Alliance and the Council is that our authority doesn't derive from controlling others. It comes from empowering them to achieve their potential. The Shepherds learned long ago that forced compliance creates stagnation. Voluntary cooperation creates innovation. She gestured toward the galleries where representatives from over 400 species sat together, many of them meeting as equals for the first time in their civilization's histories. Every species in this chamber contributes unique capabilities and perspectives. Under Council rule, those differences were seen as threats to be managed. Under the Alliance, their assets to be celebrated. Torres felt a presence beside him and turned to see Admiral Lisa Chang, whose tactical genius had been crucial during the opening phases of the campaign. Her expression reflected the same sense of historical significance that affected everyone who had witnessed the transformation. Difficult to believe it's actually finished, she said quietly. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if the Council had simply accepted humanity as equals, instead of trying to eliminate us. The Shepherds would have found another catalyst, Torres replied. Dr. Stone told me they had been evaluating hundreds of species for the role we played. Humanity just happened to develop the right combination of characteristics at the right moment. On the chamber floor, the formal ceremonies were concluding as the final holdout species agreed to join the Federation. The transformation was complete. A galactic government that had ruled for 12,000 years had been replaced in less than a year, and the transition had been accomplished with remarkably little destruction. Stone approached the central podium for his closing remarks, his ancient eyes surveying the assembled representatives with satisfaction. Representatives of the galaxy, today marks the true beginning of interstellar civilization. For too long, this galaxy has been governed by fear, by the assumption that order could only be maintained through dominance. The holographic displays shifted to show real-time feeds from across the galaxy, new colonies being established, scientific discoveries being shared openly between species, and most remarkably, former enemies collaborating on projects that would benefit entire sectors of space. The Alliance offers something different. We offer a future where every species can reach its maximum potential, where cooperation replaces coercion, and where the diversity that makes our galaxy remarkable is celebrated rather than suppressed. As the session concluded and representatives began departing to begin the work of constructing a new galactic order, Torres remained in the Great Chamber. The war that had begun with humanity's defiance of an ancient empire had ended with the birth of something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly voluntary association of free civilizations. His communication device activated with a message from Earth Command. Ambassador Torres, the President requests your immediate return to Earth for a new assignment. We've received contact from 4 previously unknown galaxies expressing interest in Alliance membership. Your expertise in first contact situations is required. Torres smiled as he realized that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. The galaxy that had tried to judge them had instead provided them with the opportunity to help bring their unique perspective to civilizations beyond their wildest imagination. The species that had learned to survive on a single dangerous world was about to help reshape multiple galaxies. As he walked toward his transport, Torres paused for one final look at the chamber where everything had changed. The crystalline dome still reached toward the stars, but now it represented not judgment, but infinite possibility. The Council had tried to control Earth, and in response, humanity had declared a war that transformed not just the galaxy, but the fundamental nature of interstellar civilization itself. The trembling was over. The building could begin.